Section 21 of The Age of Anne by Edward Ellis Morris. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Pamela Nagami. Chapter 20. The Fragments that Remain. There are several who have played parts more or less important in this history, and whose later careers we must follow to an end before parting with them. The great Duke of Marlborough had lived in dignified retirement on the Continent during all the latter part of the Queen's reign. Hearing that the Queen was not likely to live, he made preparations to return to England. Having been for some time detained by contrary winds at Ostend, on landing at Dover he received the news of the Queen's death and of the quiet accession of the new sovereign. When George I reinstated the Whigs in office, Marlborough was made Captain-General or Commander-in-Chief of the army. In that capacity he superintended the military arrangements that suppressed the rising of 1715. A little later he suffered a severe attack of paralysis, but not such as to hinder his attendance in the House of Lords and the performance of official duties. In 1722 he died, and was honoured with a splendid funeral in Westminster Abbey. The Duchess of Marlborough survived her husband many years, and died at the advanced age of 84. She occupied herself in drawing up a vindication of the Duke's conduct and her own, which offers valuable material to the historian. In the Treaty of Utrecht the interests of one people had been shamefully neglected by the Allies. The people of Catalonia had taken up arms at the instigation of the English, especially of Lord Peterborough. They had fought valiantly for the cause of the Austrian claimant. But in the negotiations the Allies deserted them. When the English made peace they withdrew the remnant of their troops from Barcelona. When the Emperor continued the war by himself, in order to concentrate his forces, he was obliged to withdraw his soldiers also. The King of Spain was about to treat them as subdued rebels, but the inhabitants determined to resist to the uttermost. They fought valiantly and gallantly, defending Barcelona, but the Spanish king was able to procure French soldiers and the services of Marshal Berwick, and thus the heroic resistance was in vain. In the September after the death of Queen Anne, Barcelona was stormed and taken. By the Treaty of Utrecht, Victor Amadeus, Duke of Savoy, was made King of Sicily. 5 years later Sicily was exchanged for Sardinia. His descendants remained kings of Sardinia until, in our own time, the title was merged in the greater title of King of Italy. During this period of peace he displayed as great talents for administration of his kingdom as he had previously shown for war. In 1730 he determined to abdicate in favour of Charles Emmanuel, his only surviving son. By no means an able man, Charles had hitherto been kept at a distance by his father, who frequently avowed his dislike for him. A little more than a year after his father's abdication, the new King of Sardinia held a meeting of his council, at which it was decided that the old king should be placed under arrest. He was very harshly treated, soldiers being sent in the night time, who tore him from his wife and hurried him off to prison. In a little more than a year again he died in confinement. It was said that he had shown a desire to regain the crown which he had surrendered, but he had no force at his disposal, and there is no evidence that the charge was true. He really fell a victim to the ambition of a minister who wished to establish a greater influence over the young king. In Spain a singular act of abdication took place. Philip, who remained king as the result of the War of Succession, abdicated in 1724 in favour of his son and retired to a monastery, but upon his son's death in the next year resumed power, though professing that it was against his will. It remains to give an account of the other and unsuccessful claimant of the Spanish crown, whom we have known as Archduke Charles, and after the death of his brother Emperor. He never could be induced quite to give up his claim on Spain, and the result was that he was never on good terms with that country. But his later history is chiefly famous on account of the war that ensued upon his death. He had no son that lived beyond infancy, but he had a daughter, the beautiful and famous Maria Theresa. On this account he prepared a document called the Pragmatic Sanction, a name given to certain very important state documents, by which he decreed that, failing male issue, his daughter was to succeed to his hereditary dominions. To securing promises of adhesion to this Pragmatic Sanction, Charles seems to have devoted all the energies of the last 15 years of his life. His diplomacy seemed successful, but when he died in 1740, the promises were not kept, and a tedious war arose, England taking the part of Maria Theresa, France and Prussia supporting the Duke of Bavaria against her. End of Section 21.